A black woman saves a rich man's broken car. When he sees the ring on her finger, his world turns upside down. No one knew her name. No one remembered her face. But on that burning hot day, she became the only hope for a man who thought he had everything. A fancy car dies on an empty road. Steam rises from the engine. A powerful businessman who controls everyone around him now sits helpless, not knowing what to do. Marcus Johnson slammed his fist on the steering wheel of his Ferrari, frustration boiling over. He checked his gold watch, 11:43 a.m. In exactly 17 minutes, he had to present the biggest deal of his life to the most important investors in America. Sweat poured down his face as he lifted the hood, only to get hit by a thick cloud of steam. "Damn it," he cursed, pulling off his tie. His $5,000 suit wasn't made for car repairs, and he knew nothing about engines. The man who ran a billion-dollar empire was completely useless in front of a pile of metal he couldn't understand. The sound of an old truck broke through his panic. A beat-up pickup stopped nearby. Marcus watched as a woman got out. She wore dirty jeans, a work shirt with rolled-up sleeves, and her curly hair was tied back. Her dark skin glistened in the harsh sun. "Need help?" she asked, walking toward him with confidence that made Marcus feel even more helpless. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes, he snapped, not hiding his anger. "My people should be sending help, but there's no phone signal in this godforsaken place." The woman didn't seem impressed by his attitude or expensive clothes. Without asking, she looked under the smoking hood like she owned the car. "It's the cooling system," she said with total confidence. "I can fix it so you can get to the city. Won't last long, but it'll give you a few hours." Marcus looked her up and down, judging her appearance. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" "I'm a mechanic," she replied coldly, staring him down without backing away. "I have a shop 10 miles from here." Without waiting for permission, she went back to her truck for tools. Her movements were smooth and precise. She started working on the engine with complete focus. Her hands, small but strong, moved like a surgeon's. "5 more minutes and you would have destroyed the whole engine," she said without looking up, fixing something Marcus couldn't even see. "These fancy cars are powerful but fragile, just like some people." The insult didn't go unnoticed, but Marcus was too worried about his meeting to get offended. "How do you know so much about luxury cars working in?" Marcus stopped, realizing how prejudiced his question sounded. "In a small town?" she finished, giving him a sharp look. "I read. I study. I care about my work. Being good at something isn't only for rich people, Mr. Johnson." Marcus was shocked she knew his name. "How do you know who I am?" "Your picture is always in the business news," she said simply, closing the hood. "There, that should get you to the city." "I owe you big time," Marcus said, relieved. He pulled out several $100 bills from his wallet. "Please take this as a thank you." When she reached out for the money, Marcus saw it. An old silver ring with a small blue stone, surprisingly delicate for someone with such working hands. A ring he knew perfectly. The world seemed to stop. A flash of memory hit him. A little girl with big, bright eyes. A promise made under a shady tree. The last gift his mother gave him before she died. "Where did you get that ring?" he asked, his voice shaking more than he wanted to admit. The question hung in the burning air. The woman quickly closed her fist, hiding the ring. "It was my mother's," she said carefully, though her eyes became guarded. "Why do you ask?" What she didn't know was that 20 years ago, that same ring had been placed on her small finger by a boy who promised to come back for her. A boy who became the man standing in front of her. A man who broke his promise and found her again in the most impossible way. Jessica Adams hardened her stare when she noticed Marcus staring at the ring. She put the money in her pocket and walked back to her truck with determination. "If the car breaks down, my shop is 10 miles away. First turn after the Riverside sign," she called out. Marcus stood torn between his crucial meeting and this disturbing discovery. "That ring," he started, but she had already started her engine. "Your meeting, Mr. Johnson," Jessica reminded him coldly. "The investors are waiting." As the Ferrari disappeared down the road, Jessica stood perfectly still. "He didn't recognize me," she whispered, touching the ring with her thumb. A habit she'd had for 20 years. "After all this time, he just didn't see me." At Hope Auto Repair, Jessica worked furiously on a broken engine, putting all her anger into every movement. "You're going to break that part," said Robert, her uncle, approaching carefully. He was tall with gray hair, and the only person who knew her complete story. He showed up, Uncle Rob, with a broken car, like some cruel joke. Robert froze. "Marcus Johnson, the boy who promised to return." "The man who forgot," Jessica corrected, wiping her hands on a rag. "He looked at me and saw just another mechanic. He recognized the ring, but not the girl who kept it for 20 years. That night, Jessica opened a wooden box from under her bed. Inside were newspaper clippings showing Marcus Johnson's rise to power. His face appeared in articles about business success, and his recent engagement to Victoria Sterling, daughter of a fashion empire. "Tomorrow, he won't even remember the ring," she said to the empty room. Jessica was wrong. The next morning, a plain car pulled up outside her shop. Marcus got out, this time without his expensive suit, trying not to be noticed. "We're open," Jessica said, keeping her distance. "Actually, I came to give you this back," he said, holding out his hand. In his palm was a small wooden bird carved from wood. Jessica's world stopped. That bird, her first carving, given to Marcus as a goodbye gift. "Sunshine Children's Home, Building C," he said softly. "You were the girl who taught me to carve wood when all the other boys made fun of me." "You promised you'd come back," Jessica said, the words escaping without her control. "I tried," Marcus replied, something dark crossing his face. "For years, but my father had different plans." Robert came out of the work area, wiping his hands, his eyes sizing up Marcus with built-up suspicion. "So the young prince returns," he said in a low voice. 20 years later, Marcus met his stare. "I understand why you don't trust me, but I came to ask for a chance to explain. Robert saved me when I left the orphanage," Jessica explained. "He taught me everything I know, gave me a home when nobody else would. Something I promised to do," Marcus admitted with clear regret. "Why now?" Jessica challenged. "After all this time?" Marcus took a deep breath. "In 3 weeks, I'll announce my engagement to a woman I don't love, take over a company I secretly hate, and become the man my father always forced me to be." He paused. "Then I saw you, or rather, I saw the ring, and something woke up inside me." Marcus's phone rang loudly. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. 6th call. "She seems desperate," Jessica said bitterly. "My prison guard," he replied, hanging up. "Our marriage is a business deal dressed up as love." "What do you want from me?" Jessica asked, crossing her arms. "Forgiveness for abandoning me?" "Answers," he said simply. "And maybe a chance to fix the biggest mistake of my life." What Marcus didn't reveal was the investigation he had started the night before. A deep search into Jessica Adams, her past at the orphanage, and the mysterious disappearance of documents about property that once belonged to her family. What Jessica hid was the file in the back of her shop. Yellowed papers with the Johnson Enterprises logo, signed by Marcus's father, detailing the illegal theft of the Adams family land. The same land where the new corporate complex that would be Marcus's legacy now stood. As they stared at each other, neither knew their lives were connected by more than childhood memories, by a conspiracy that destroyed a family to build an empire. 3 days passed since the unexpected reunion. Marcus canceled meetings and gave away responsibilities, diving obsessively into old files. Something didn't add up in his father's story about the land that was now part of the new Johnson business complex. At the family mansion, he searched his father's office when he found a locked folder labeled Project Riverside, the same name as the town where Jessica lived. Using a key he had secretly copied years ago, Marcus opened it and felt his blood turn cold. Contracts, lawsuits, and one particularly shocking document. A fake death certificate for Jessica's mother. He faked her death, he whispered in disbelief, to steal the land. At the same time, in Robert's shop, Jessica was making her own decision. She had kept the truth too long. "I'm going to confront him," she declared, showing Robert the hidden file. "The documents are real. His father's signature is on all of them." "It's dangerous," Robert warned. "The Johnsons destroyed your family once. They can do worse now." Jessica touched the sapphire ring. "I have nothing left to lose." That night, Marcus was driving toward the shop when he got a text from Jessica. "City Park, 20 minutes. Come alone." The park in Riverside was empty when Marcus arrived. Jessica was waiting, sitting on a bench under a big tree, strangely similar to the one at the orphanage where they first met. "For 20 years, I wondered why my mother left me," Jessica began without introduction. "Why lost everything in one moment?" "Jessica, I've discovered something terrible," Marcus interrupted, his eyes showing real horror. "My father. Your father faked my mother's death," she finished, handing him yellowed papers. "Then he threatened to kill her if she tried to get me back, so he could steal our land." Marcus turned pale looking at the documents. The signature was unmistakable, the same one he'd seen in his own discovery. "How did you get these?" he asked, his voice shaking. "My mother left them with Robert before she disappeared. He waited until I was old enough to understand." Jessica pulled out an old photograph. "This is my mother, Sarah Adams. She didn't abandon me. She was forced to disappear." The photo showed a woman with a kind face wearing the same sapphire ring. In the background was a green valley now covered with concrete and steel bearing the Johnson logo. "Tomorrow I'm going to make everything public," Jessica announced. At the groundbreaking ceremony for the new complex, Marcus stared at her, stunned. "There will be hundreds of reporters, investors, politicians." "Exactly," Jessica confirmed. The perfect moment to reveal that the Johnson empire was built on lies, threats, and destroyed lives. Marcus's phone rang insistently. His father, for the 5th time in a row. He ignored it. "There's more," Jessica continued. "I have reason to believe my mother is still alive." This hit Marcus like lightning. "How? Where?" Her last message came 8 years ago, an anonymous letter, but the handwriting was hers. Jessica hesitated. From a psychiatric hospital in Pine Valley, Marcus took a deep breath, making a decision that would change everything. "Don't wait until tomorrow," he said, his eyes meeting hers with new determination. "Let's go now." "Where?" "To the ceremony. My father moved the event to tonight, afraid of leaks about the project. Only the inner circle knows." In the limousine on the way to the complex, Marcus explained his plan. "I have full access to the security system and the stage. I can get you in position at the exact moment to confront him publicly." What Marcus didn't say was that he had also discovered the exact location of Jessica's mother. Not in a hospital, but on private Johnson property, held prisoner to ensure her silence. The event was spectacular. The business and political elite admired the impressive complex built on what had once been the Adams family home. Richard Johnson, perfect in his suit, smiled for cameras, his authority unquestionable. Marcus finally. He called when he saw his son. His eyes hardened when he noticed Jessica beside him. "What is she doing here?" "A special guest, father," Marcus replied coldly. "Someone with a fascinating story about the origins of this land." Richard turned pale. "My office. Now." In his luxurious office overlooking the destroyed valley, The Johnson patriarch stared at Jessica with contempt. "How much?" he asked coldly. "What's your price to disappear like your mother should have?" "My mother," Jessica replied, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling in her chest. "I want to know where she is." Richard laughed, a heartless sound. "After all these years, she probably doesn't even remember you." "She's alive then," Marcus concluded, secretly recording the conversation on his phone. "You've kept her prisoner for 20 years. "Prisoner?" Richard dismissed the word with scorn. "I gave her a life of luxury in exchange for a piece of worthless land. It was a deal. A deal made under threat is no deal." A new voice interrupted. At the door stood Robert, accompanied by an older woman whose eyes, identical to Jessica's, overflowed with decades of held-back pain. "Mother," Jessica whispered, her voice breaking. Sarah Adams moved slowly forward, her eyes fixed on the daughter she hadn't seen since she was a child. "Jessica," she said simply, her voice choked with emotion. Behind them in the hallway, Victoria watched the scene with cold interest, her phone recording every word. The reunion between mother and daughter was about to expose not only the lies behind the Johnson empire, but also reveal how greed had destroyed lives and torn families apart. Richard Johnson's office vibrated with tension as mother and daughter looked at each other for the first time in 20 years. The Johnson patriarch, always in control, seemed to have completely lost his grip on the situation. "Impossible," he muttered, stepping backward. "You were under constant watch." "Your money buys silence, Richard, but not true loyalty," Sarah replied, her voice strengthened by decades of held-back pain. "Some guards have families. They have hearts." Jessica, trembling, slowly approached her mother. 20 years of forced separation. 20 years of unanswered questions. When they hugged, there were no words. Only tears that spoke louder than any speech. Marcus watched the scene, a storm of emotions crossing his face. "Why, father?" he finally asked. "Why destroy a family for a piece of land?" "That land was never just a piece of land," Richard replied, regaining some composure. "It's the largest freshwater reserve in the region, worth billions, the future of this company. And that justifies destroying lives?" Marcus asked, his voice heavy with disgust. "How do you justify that to yourself?" A dangerous gleam crossed Richard's eyes. "The same way I justified adopting an orphan to replace the son I lost." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus staggered as if struck by lightning. "What?" he whispered, color draining from his face. "You think it's coincidence you spent 6 months in that orphanage?" Richard laughed bitterly. "Your mother died in childbirth along with our real son. You were just a convenient replacement. A baby with no medical problems, no family to interfere." The revelation hit Marcus like an avalanche. His entire life, his entire identity, built on a lie. He wasn't a Johnson by blood. He was an orphan whose records had been changed, just like Jessica's. "He's lying," said Victoria, finally entering the room. In her hands was an old file. "This explains why I always felt something was wrong with our business marriage." "What have you done?" Richard asked, turning pale at the sight of the file. "Proper research before a business marriage," she replied coldly, "including your complete history of fake adoptions. You didn't just adopt Marcus. There were others." Robert approached Marcus, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "This means you and Jessica. You're not just childhood friends. You're half-siblings," Victoria finished. "Same mother. Documents forged to hide the connection." Jessica and Marcus looked at each other, the truth reflected in their identical eyes. Same shade, same shape. How had nobody noticed before? "That's why the ring meant so much to both of you," Sarah whispered. "It was our family treasure. I gave it to Marcus before Richard took him away, making him believe it was a gift from the mother he never knew." At that moment, police sirens sounded in the distance, rapidly approaching. "This ends now," announced Marcus, his voice finding new determination. "All the lies, all the manipulation." The following week, newspapers exploded with headlines about the scandal. Richard Johnson, respected business leader, arrested for fraud, kidnapping, and document forgery. The Johnson empire, built on crime and family separation, collapsed as investigations revealed decades of corruption. Marcus, discovering his true identity as Sarah Adams's son, gave up the Johnson name and took his real surname. The land was legally returned to the Adams family, and the corporate project was transformed into an environmental preserve with a community center benefiting hundreds of local families. 6 months later, in the Small Hope Auto Repair Shop, now expanded and modernized, Jessica adjusted a car engine while Marcus reviewed documents for the newly created Adams Foundation for Abandoned Children. "Is it still strange?" she asked, wiping grease from her hands. "Finding out your whole life was built on a lie?" Marcus smiled. A genuine smile he had rarely shown in his previous life. "Strange, yes, but also freeing." He touched the small wooden bird he now wore as a pendant. "We lost 20 years, but we got back our truth, our family." Sarah entered the shop carrying lemonade. Her eyes, once marked by sadness, now shone with the peace of someone who had finally found justice. "The ring," she said, noticing Jessica still wore it. "It always kept us connected, even when we didn't know it." Sometimes the most elaborate lies are undone by the simplest things. A ring passed from mother to son, then to a sister who didn't even know she existed. And sometimes empires built on injustice crumble not under the weight of guilt, but under the unshakable force of truth that surfaces when least expected. If this story about family ties buried under decades of lies touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that show how the truth, however painful, has the power to heal wounds that seemed permanent and reconnect lives that were separated by greed and power.